Oh gosh, I want to say d4, but I'm afraid of c5. I'll go for c4 before Magnus makes his move. I'm starting with c4 in this position. And we have e4. Good job
and
there.
what?
And
h6.
Oh wow, we were not expecting that.
h6 instantly blitzed out. Okay, Alireza is trying to play on the nerves of Magnus. Yeah, I mean e4, h6. This is shocking. Yes, we do understand that the bishop can be activated to h7, but first of all, the queen on e1 already protects that pawn on e4. Yeah, so this isn't an issue for us. We also highlighted that d4, f3, knight f2 is very natural. So what is Alireza trying to do? Does he want to break with f5, f7, f5, opening up some diagonals, but then e4, e5 will be also a question? I'm not yet understanding it.
You know, when players are in a must-win situation, we often talk about the different approaches that you can take. And there are two of them. You can either go all out, play something completely unsound, go into some rash territory and try to make the most of that. But often that backfires because it's so unsound, it's hard to come back from it. And we see the top players employ the approach of just playing a game, of just trying to get a normal position, a normal setup, develop the pieces. And I think for Alireza, he just wants to get something completely unsound, completely chaotic from the start.
Yeah, but where is the chaos? Yeah, for example, Magnus, if he wants, he can simply play c3, bishop c2, and bishop e3, knight f2. Every single piece is harmonious. He occupies the center. The knight on h8, the knight on f8, they are not really doing much because I'm expecting black to push d5, yeah, with this construction. But I'm just not seeing the bishop on g1 is already beautifully protecting that c5 square. I think that Magnus is extremely happy.
Yeah, where is the chaos in this position?
a4, even ambitious, a4, a5, go for it.
Is he trying to get c5? But there are always these checks in the position with the g7 pawn loose.
Well, basically also seeing that Alireza is blitzing out his moves, I feel like his nerves are in play. Yeah, he's very nervous. He just wants to play everything a tempo, but this will help Magnus. Yeah? We know exactly that if Magnus feels that he is doing well, he is not getting nervous.
All right, so Alireza, he stops this a-pawn from getting all the way to a6. Nicholas, not loving Alireza's approach in this must-win situation. What do you think are his ideas, or how can he create this chaos we're discussing?
Yes, Peter is not loving it, you're not loving it, the engine is also not loving it, as we can see. Clear advantage for White, almost winning advantage objectively already, because White occupies the center, has more squares for the pieces, also more space. On the queen side, a4, a5, a nice touch. Yes, I am a little bit surprised by Firouzja's approach. You don't really need to go for such a unusual setup from move one, because this is not standard chess. You don't have to worry about opening theory and immediately all the pieces being traded down. You don't even get a chance to play for the win. You could have just played more, well, you could have maybe mirrored in the beginning and then tried to create chances later on. So he is playing very fast, but I don't like his moves so far, and Magnus definitely in a good spot here. Looking very comfortable. I'm still not sure where these knights are going to go on h8 and f8, because if you move it to g6, then it's in the way of the bishop. d5 now was played to put some pressure on the center, but Carlsen is very solid, very safe. He only needs a draw. He will be very happy with how this opening went, Peter.
Yes, certainly, because we speculated that maybe Magnus was not that happy at the beginning, that it's not the straightforward standard kind of play that we have already seen before, that you just open up the diagonal for the bishop and you take it from there. He got the dream scenario. Now I'm also thinking about maybe he can continue his journey with the knight. Yeah, knight d3, making sure that also the c5 square is protected, opening up the bishop from g1 and setting up some more pressure on black's camp. I'm a big fan of White's position. Now we also understand Alireza's strategy, why he was walking and not fully focusing, because probably he has made up the decision that he will just do something berserk. Yeah? He will not play according to the normal rules of chess. He will just try to play a tempo and put the pressure on the clock on Magnus.
Peter, I'm not sure if it was strategy or tilt what we're seeing right now. And again, going back to the way the day has gone, this approach by Alireza, it just feels like like he wasn't able to keep his nerves, the tension in the match, and just go like, okay, I'm going to just play the unusual start of the position, try to play some normal chess as much as I can. 8-6, e6, and it feels like it's really backfiring right now. To me, it really does feel like Alireza is on tilt right now. Magnus is making all the normal development moves. I also want to point out that at some moment, we might even be seeing a rook lift. But you have to be just a little careful because this a3 square is guarded by the bishop. We might see the queen come into the attack from g3, once again targeting the g7 pawn. Right now, for Alireza, the knight still remains on h8.
And now we see why it was so important for Magnus to win this previous game, because it changed everything. If that game would have ended in a draw, then Alireza could have just mirrored Magnus's play and we would be having a completely different match. Now he's in a must-win situation with black and he's trying to put the pressure on. He's 4 minutes on the clock. And yes, you are highlighting white still has this problem with the bishop on d1, but this is the only piece which is still not exactly participating. You can play c4.
I wanted to say this move.
Yes, c4.
I really did. I said it on move number 1. But, it's harder to say it right now with this bishop on h7 lined up against this king. But, yeah, I just want to get this bishop into the game, Peter.
Yeah, c4 makes perfect sense because white does not need to castle at all. The rook on a1 is already included in the game because Magnus managed to push a4, a5. Now he's opening up the c1 rook. And, well, we are always talking about how does white improve the position. The problem is that black actually has some horrible task ahead because how do you save that? So, yeah, knight g6 is played. Is Alireza somehow trying to activate the queen and then make a short castle? Yeah, because all he needs to, but where do you place he will play the move queen d7 next after he has already played knight g6 because it covers the e5 square, so white is not able to jump knight e5. And then suddenly a short castle changed the course of the game, and let's see, but yeah, bishop a4 hitting that queen, and how do you activate, how do you set up the chance of going castling next?
Bishop a4 by Magnus hitting the queen. I'm still liking white's position and it just feels like you're getting your pieces. Also that knight from g6, I want to highlight, doesn't really, at least immediately, have a big future. The knight on d3 takes control of the f4 square. The queen on e1 takes control of the h4 square. It's also coming in the way of its own bishop diagonal. Just feels like Magnus has managed to find the more appropriate spots for developing his own pieces, while Alireza, he's the one who needs to create the winning chances here. Talking long-term in this position, Niklas, where do you see, is it that Alireza can perhaps try to get some breaks in or some ideas in this position?
Well, what he would probably dream of would be somehow to play the short castle that Peter was talking about, but in order to do so, you need to clear all the squares in between, and right now the queen is still in the way. You cannot put it onto d6 because you run into e5, but just theoretically, if you manage to do that, if you manage to put the king over here, maybe you can try to open up with b6 against the king, but maybe this king is also going to leave, who knows? The rooks haven't moved yet, so this king could also castle short. White is controlling the center beautifully. Black is cramped with his pieces. This all looks a bit awkward. The engine is loving the position as well. Obviously, queen e2, another very natural move. It's not even clear how black continues. c6 seems to be necessary. c6, queen c7, and then maybe a castle, something along these lines.
But be careful, yes. c6, bishop f2, some bishop g3 ideas appearing. It's very scary, right?
Yes, you're weakening your dark squares further. But what else are you going to do in this position? I'm struggling to come up with constructive ideas here.
Yeah, I understand you perfectly because probably they don't exist. And besides, Magnus with queen e2, nicely setting up bishop f2 next. Very useful move, and then short castle is possible any moment. And black's queen is still stuck on d8. Nothing moves. Yeah, this is a total catastrophe. Yeah, because it's a great strategy to try to put pressure on your opponent with the clock. But if you don't have a move, and white's every single natural move will come handily, then it's so tough for Alireza.
Just so much easier for Magnus to even make the next couple of moves. He's got more space in the center. The king on b1 is absolutely safe. The rook on a1 doesn't even need to develop currently. The rook on c1 doing a great job. The bishop, as you pointed out, can eventually switch over to the other diagonal. Meanwhile, we're just struggling to find the play for black in this position. Peter, what about you? What do you think? How much of this game that we're seeing developing has to do with what has happened earlier on in the day?
Yeah, it's well, I would not say like it has anything to do with the first game that Magnus bounced back, because then in the second game it was a completely wild affair. Alireza had all the chances to win and bounce back immediately. He missed his chances, and as you said, I feel some tilt, this nervousness. He hasn't calmed himself down, and this impulsive h6. The first reaction, what? E4, h6, what is the perspective? Yeah, what are you trying to achieve? It was all nerves.
Yeah, in standard chess, you know, we see moves like 8-6 or moves like 8-3 in the first couple of moves, taking away a key development square for the bishop on g5. But in this starting position that we had in freestyle chess, there were just no ideas connected to it. Sure, you get your bishop on 8-7, but it really doesn't have the biggest future over there. As we saw, on the other hand, the counterparts. For Magnus, he's managed to get his own pieces without even developing. He's defending against some key ideas. He doesn't need to rush and will eventually slowly get it to the diagonal that he wants. For Alireza, in a must-win game, it has been a disastrous start. Okay, the clocks are level, but it's just hard to find a move.
Yeah, knight h5, only move, yeah.
Eyeing the f4 square, and also some ideas of the bishop stepping in, but
I haven't seen any other move. Yeah, it's not a happy move. Bishop ec, then some bishop g5. Okay, you have to try to create something, yeah, because the f4 square is the only thing. We see the evaluation bar jumping, skyrocketing. Clearly, this is a desperate measure. And but what to do? And the problem is, and why I'm always saying that take your time at the beginning, because Magnus just plays g3, stopping the black's idea with knight f4. What does Alireza profit from that he has this position? Yeah, now he's forced to spend time because he has no good moves, and he can even think for 2 hours he cannot find a good idea. Yeah, that's kind of a big problem.
You have to watch out, because if given the option, Magnus might just go e5 and
be careful,
trap this
knight f4. Then you open up the diagonal. Be careful.
It's an idea that I was just pointing out, and you're absolutely right, Peter. Like, let me just show that line that you need to time it really well. For example, okay, I'm making a non-move, and if you rush with this, you're pointing out a really nice tactical trick, and then suddenly 8-6, bishop 8-7 will make perfect sense, and we'd be singing praises of this opening approach. But coming to the point is that I think black might be at some point forced to actually retreat with the knight to f6 before it ends up getting trapped on h5.
Yeah, but on the other hand, he just moved to h5, so I don't see him returning.
He doesn't. He plays c6.
Yeah, so he wanted to make sure that the bishop can't reach that diagonal yet. What we talked about, it's a human way of playing, and he's dreaming about just somehow get my queen out, and give me the chance to castle. But actually, queen c7 also runs into some pins, but we can sacrifice the pawn. So after queen c7, cd, ed is not an issue, because we again have this knight f4 strike, and white should never touch the e4 pawn. He has to keep that.
That's actually a really nice line, and I just want to show that for a moment that in this, okay, it's kind of hard to get it.
Okay, bishop f2.
But let's make a move. Queen c7.
And it's taboo. Never take on d5. Knight f4 is coming.
Basically, what you're saying is, Peter, don't push, don't take on e5 because of this tactical threat of knight f4. So the one idea that you need to watch out for, maybe you don't even need to take. I wonder if you can go knight f4 directly.
Yes, you can, of course.
Just jump in with the knight. And sure, you get one knight, but you're going to lose the house. The queen is hanging, the knight is hanging, the bishop's suddenly a power piece. And that's big trouble.
And Magnus has made a move. He moved his, what did he do after c6?
He's gone from bishop to c2. So I like this.
Yes.
And now I want to just point out that finally e5 might be a threat on the board, which Alireza has to handle.
Yeah, basically, okay, especially after c6, bishop c2 makes so much sense.
Yes.
First of all, the pawn on a5 was maybe hanging, maybe not really, but okay. And the bishop has done its job on a4. It provoked the weakness. Thank you very much. Magnus is open-minded, always adjusting his strategy to the concrete new situation.
I wonder if Alireza had it in mind that he wanted to provoke the move g3 before playing c6, which felt like the only way to get the pieces out. Because g3 also takes away a really nice diagonal for the white bishop to come on, with a powerful attack further on the black king. So perhaps that was also something on his mind when he played the move knight h5, but it's the kind of position where it's just so hard to come up with moves for black here.
Yes. Now, okay, can we? Yeah. Do we have to worry about this e5 f4? Yeah, e5 f4 and just trapping the h5 knight.
Alireza lost the knight in the last game, Peter. I don't think he wants to lose it in this one. I mean, I would definitely not want the knight stuck here forever. Do you see an alternative? Because you don't even want to take here. Once the knight lands, it's coming on to b6.
Yeah, knight f6 is played. Yeah, the knight retreats to f6. Okay, but he can say that, you know what, now at least I'm already planning to move my queen out to the 7th rank and then castle. But this is terrible, yeah, that we are talking about this, that somehow I'm having a very bad position, but at least let me somehow get my king to safety.
It would still be a bad position because look at Magnus's pieces, the center, the space advantage. Yet, Niklas, there's something to be said about Alireza in a difficult position, managing to make the moves required to at least get his king to safety.
It feels at least it is somewhat stable now with the situation in the center, the pawn being protected several times. And, well, Magnus is certainly enjoying his position, but as we also saw in the other games, well, at some point you got to do something. You got to increase your advantage. You got to maybe transform the position. That's exactly on cue. That's exactly what he's doing right now. He is releasing the tension in the center, maybe a bit early, but also good. So black has a choice of taking back on d5 with the e-pawn or with the c-pawn. So this is why he played the bishop on c2, so he doesn't have to worry about any problems on this long diagonal anymore. Peter and Tanya, what do you think about this early take? Why is he taking on d5 in this moment?
Well, interesting, and I have seen Alireza on camera exactly at that moment, and I felt like his body language signals that at least with my play I provoked Magnus to take on d5. But clearly, if Magnus already captures on d5, it signals that he has a very clear vision what he's gonna do. Yeah, otherwise, prematurely he would not release the tension just like that.
And I see two ways of capturing it. To me, instinctively, I want to take with the c-pawn because my rook is on c8 and I just feel I want it to open up and start putting pressure. I want more space for my pieces. I can't really explain why not e takes d5. But perhaps it helps white with the queen already on e2. Peter, what would be your decision to recapture on d5 and how would you arrive at it?
Well, also it's connected with the match situation, right? That we, as black, probably want as much complex fight as possible and then breaking the symmetry. Yeah, getting an asymmetrical position with c takes d5 makes a lot of sense unless it's very bad. Yeah, that's the big question. Also, one thing that one has to say that, do we care about knight e5? Yeah, because I somehow feel that e takes d5 is on the board.
Yes.
That maybe Magnus, knight e5 on the board, instantly played. Because whenever you trade knight e5, d5, bishop takes e2, rook takes e2, and I'm ready to castle long immediately. Yeah, so I'm hitting that knight on f6, opening up the bishop and ready to castle. That's the idea what Magnus had in mind with e d5.
And there's another threat on the board. The f7 pawn is hanging, so I'm not even sure how Alireza avoids this trade on e5.
Yes, that's exactly, I think, the answer why Magnus had captured on d5. Yeah, he wants to have clarity. He said, enough, I have made enough preparatory moves. Now it's time to cash in or increase the pressure.
And this is the line that you were pointing out, and let's just show it. You take on e5, the bishop's hanging, you can't move the knight, so you first have to take here on c2. And now black has to move the knight. Again,
and highlight the bishop on g1. Yeah, that we beautifully opened that diagonal.
Without ever having to move it.
Yes, eyes on b6. And knight d7, then c d5.
Oh,
knight h8. Yes,
because
correct.
This just looked extremely bad. Well, I don't know what doesn't look bad right now for Alireza. He's decided to keep the knight on the board, at least not allow the bishop to come into the game. There's something to be said about this move, even though it's a hard and an ugly move to make.
Yeah, and look at this. Magnus immediately trades on h7. He says, okay, I understand your move, that this is total desperation.
And it was a starting position, right? The knight
Yes.
was on h8.
And if it's total desperation, why I should be one worrying about it, right? So he captures and c takes d5. He opens up because queen takes d5 runs into knight d2 to c4, going to b6, forking. That would be a devastating fork. And after c takes d5, things are also escalating.
Yeah, this is the capture that you want. I'm going to just put it on the board, the point you're making. The knight jumps onto c4, and sure, you can hide from one pin, but not from one fork, but not from the other. White ends up winning material. After c takes d5, the rooks have been traded off, and can there be tactics against the bishop on e7?
Well,
I mean, is there options?
no,
like...
that is queen f5
oh,
check.
yes, let's point that out
Yes.
as well. Knight f7 would be the move you'd love to make, but you end up losing the knight with a check. So don't take on f7.
Yeah, and Magnus already has made up his mind, so he's following his strategy. Knight b3, simple and effective. Exactly. He is also probably going king a to rook c1. Yeah, it's just perfect coordination. Look at those knights. Knight on h8, knight on h7.
Oh my gosh. And compare them.
Yes. And how is black? Okay, black does not need to castle. Black can play a move like king a7. Yeah, so black can do also the artificial castling, but white has so much control.
So knight c5 at some point.
It's really looking very bad. But on the other hand, okay, at least no direct immediate knockout blow. But let's not forget, black needs to win this game, right? That's completely insane.
Look at the position, just no coordination in black's pieces. Nicholas, is it as hopeless as it looks to us?
Well, it's definitely bad. I wouldn't say hopeless quite yet, but if you have to win, it's definitely very difficult. Now we see another move, knight g5. At least one of these bad two knights is coming back. And yes, the move king a2 now, as Peter highlighted, to let this rook join the game via c1 seems very sensible. Just one idea you have to be looking out for is queen e8 threatening queen a4 check. And apparently you can allow that here with rook c1, because in the end you have knight d7 and you take the bishop on e7 and have a strong attack. But this is definitely one idea to look out for. Knight g5. Well, it would take a small miracle for Magnus not to at least get a draw in this one.
I'm also dreaming about the position where white can actually jump, sorry, not with the queen, but jump in with the knight to c5 at the right moment to really open up this bishop. I don't believe right now is the moment. I like the ideas that we've been pointing out with getting the rook to c1. Meanwhile, what does black want? How does black actually want to improve the position? Peter, at some point, you have to push this knight out of here. It's not a happy move again, but without f6, how are you surviving this game?
Yeah, you will have to try to get f16. I'm also expecting that the knight probably will jump to e6. Yeah, black's knight just to get closer to the action. And after knight e6, f6, then at least we also don't have to worry about some tactics on the bishop on e7. And if the knight needs to retreat and then suddenly black starts getting knight f7 and then maybe knight d6, knight c4, we'll be talking about a completely different scenario. But I would like to calm everybody down. That's way too far away. And just following king a2, rook c1, clearly king a2 also queen e8 was the only move that really bothered me. But if rook c1 is possible after that, that solves all the questions. Yeah, because this is just such a stunning line. Rook c1, thank you very much. I give you the chance what you are about to achieve. And after knight d7 check, king a7, queen takes e7, this is total plus minus.
Queen c5 coming in next.
Yeah, so all eyes on Magnus. He still has a lot of time on the clock, but he shouldn't be burning. He has just played it. Yeah, king a2 on the board.
Very nice. And it's also sidestepping any checks on f5. So now, at some point, that we could have tactics against the bishop on e7, which also needs to be kept in mind for Alireza.
Yeah, many things. Clearly, okay, he was relying on queen e8 against king a2, but if he realizes that actually, yeah, there is this knight d7 check problem, yeah, he goes.
He does it.
Yeah, anyway.
Oh, we might be seeing this line being played out. This might be just over in a couple of moves.
And look at this, Magnus's hand. He's about to make rook c1, I think, because
He's calculated it.
he has calculated it before.
It's about spotting one more move than your opponent. Perhaps for Alireza, he thought king a2, not possible. I get my queen on a4. But the idea of knight d7 is devastating after that.
And if it wouldn't be such an important game, Magnus most probably would have already blitzed out. He sees that he still has 6 minutes.
And I want to point out one more idea, that after rook c1, you know, if you play bishop d6, Peter, there are more tactics in the position because I want to threaten
On the
f6.
board. Rook c1 on the board.
Rook c1 on the board,
Yes.
but this would walk into knight c6 and a discovered check on the queen, winning the game. So there is no way to even activate the bishop. This is our live position.
Yes,
It's
rook
been really
c1.
difficult. Alireza takes the win in the classical game, in the first game.
With a fantastic performance.
Really, yeah, exactly. It wasn't just the result, but also the quality of that game. It was a rook pawn ending in the end. He showed amazing technique and converted it. And then today, you know, the day started bad, losing the classical, but he had it in the first rapid game. He got such a good position out of the opening.
And very much according to his style, yeah, very energetic position, everything under control. But then Magnus was doing his magic. He survived those very dangerous moments. There is one line that we have to discuss, some f6. Yeah, we're kicking that knight away. It's very natural. Yeah, and after knight d3, queen a4 check, yeah, it's already a slightly different scenario, but you will have rook c3 move, I believe. After queen takes b3, because now we cannot take the bishop because the knight is hanging, but rook c3. That's the move Magnus had to foresee, and anyway, after queen b5, queen takes e7, this is a winning position. We can forget about the a5 pawn. It's going to be checkmate. And look at the camera. Magnus in total control, leaning back, super happy. He knows that, yes, I have everything under control.
Yeah.
Everything goes according to plans.
Magnus is feeling the rhythm, and today has been his day. And I think that's not only scary for Alireza, but for the rest of the field as well. Because he was very shaky in the round robin, then losing the first game. But today it's been a Magnus Carlsen show against Firouzja.
Yeah, and I have to highlight that Magnus was coming slightly later to the breakfast today than usual. Yeah, because normally I'm coming like 11:15, 11:20, and he was almost always, yeah, not almost always, he was always there already in cheerful mood. Today he came after me. Yeah, so it just meant for me, actually, that was my feeling, that he wanted to have as much rest as possible, and also to have that breakfast as late as possible.
And whatever he did seems to have worked to perfection today, because he's had quite the day. f6 on the board, attacking the knight. So the line that we were seeing might be possible, might appear on the board, because once you move back with your knight to d3, the bishop on e7 is actually pinned. You have to watch out for threats all along. And I do see, our Valbar seems to say that perhaps there's something even stronger than knight d3, but I really like the move knight d3. It just feels so natural. You want to put that knight on c5 next.
Wow, but Magnus is taking his time, which means that he has also spotted something, and this is what we are. Is queen c2 maybe a move? Yeah, that can you try to set up some checkmating ideas with queen c7 check? Because just look at this, queen c2,
nice.
f takes e5, queen c7 check. Oops.
Peter, you can just make the moves. I think it's a really nice plan.
Yeah, queen c2. So of course black should not fall into the trap. Then we give check, and after king a7 we play d takes e5 check and checkmate with the bishop on g1, which had not yet moved. Yeah, this is freestyle chess at its best.
That bishop on g1 has been on that spot since the start of the game, and it might just deliver checkmate in this position, because this line is very much possible. If Magnus, the fact that he slowed down knight d3, which is such a natural move to make in this position, I think he spotted this idea of queen c2. And if you don't take on e5, you perhaps have to fall back with your knight on e6 to defend the c7 square. So I'm just wondering if he's calculating what happens after knight e6.
Yeah, knight e6, so bishop d6, in any case, make sure that you are somehow controlling the c7 square. Forget about ever capturing that knight on e5, because we need the a7 square for our king.
He's about to make a move. Nicholas, what do you think? Are we going to see knight d3 or queen c2 on the board, and which one's stronger?
Well, there are many choices. That's why he's thinking. There's also a move like h4. You could even just play king b1 and then simply take back and sacrifice the piece like this. Obviously not a very human choice, but there are different moves to consider. Certainly knight d3, very human. Queen c2 also makes a lot of sense. So he just has so many attractive choices here, and that's why he's pausing. But he's getting a little bit low on the clock, 3 minutes against 5 minutes. However, queen c2 looks good. Knight e6 is probably forced then to stop the invasion along the c file. Now bring the knight back. This looks good. Or the immediate knight d3
h4
also
played.
looks very good. But h4 has some clear advantages because now the knight is hit. And I was thinking that after f takes e5, the plan is to go queen takes e5.
Well, knight h3, forget about everything else. Knight h3
What?
on the board.
What? Knight h3. Wow, immediately.
He really wants to get rid of this bishop that we've been pointing out, which might deliver checkmate. But Nicholas, that looks like he's self-trapping the knight. On the previous game, there was a knight on h3. There's a knight on h3 in this one. I'm seeing a similar storyline here.
Yeah, that is a common theme indeed. Well, he wants to trade and still this knight is hanging, but white can really go for the attack here. But I'm guessing that Firouzja is inviting these complications because he is ahead on the clock, and if he can maybe try to trick Magnus somehow and maybe figure out a way to pose problems when Magnus is very low on the clock and he has only around 2 minutes, then there could be a chance. Now queen c2 with the threat of queen c7 followed by knight c6 is very powerful, so you cannot allow this kind of business. You have to give the queen and lose the game very soon. And now after knight h3, he's still thinking. So after queen c2, bishop d6 would be necessary to stop this. And now maybe bishop e3, but just giving up this full piece seems scary.
He played the move
scary.
queen c2, but he's under 2 minutes and his heart rate is about over 100, 105. That's kind of a record. We haven't seen it from Magnus so far. Bishop d6, bishop e3 on the board, and all eyes on the next complications. I did feel on Magnus's body language that he felt like, wow, why did this got so complicated? He understands that probably objectively is winning, but he also has little time on the clock. He knows how tricky, how dangerous Alireza is. He only needs one chance, one shot to get into the game. But Magnus is playing everything correctly.
But I want to dive a little deep into this position, Peter, because it feels like, wow, I was going to ask you what happens after pawn takes knight, after f takes e5, but we do have moves coming in, so perhaps we'll check in on the variations later. Alireza really doesn't want to allow the bishop into the game, but the knight on h3 is trapped, and I'm just wondering if Magnus has the time to go for it, but he has to always remember about this check on a4, Peter. That's the check which doesn't allow this queen to go for this knight on h3.
Exactly, yeah. It's clear that for sure for computer this is very easily winning. Yeah, maybe just king b1, get that king out of that corner, just to step out of queen a4 check. The king on a7 basically make sure that black will never be able to capture the knight on e5, because then d takes e5 is check. The big question, can black somehow get his knight from h8 into the game with knight f7? Yeah, and there are some, because look at this right now, knight h3, knight h8. This is not the way how we are supposed to play chess.
Yeah, knights on the rim, and this is double knights on the rim. It's double trouble for Firouzja. King b1 to me looks like such a Magnus Carlsen move to make. You know, these little king moves that just sidestep any threats in the position, and then you're free with your queen. It's definitely on his radar, but he doesn't go for it. He goes for a different approach, Peter. He goes for f4. He's really trapping the knight. This is crazy. Like you pointed out, you can't take on e5. Do you have time to actually now bring the knight into the game? Do you have knight f7?
Well, but I think that after knight f7 with f4, he made sure that I will not touch my e5 knight. That knight will stay on e5. Please take it. I reinforced it with both my pawns d4, f4. But Magnus is under a minute. This is the only hope that Alireza has. Maybe some rook d8, king a8, just to get that rook into the game and then move that king out of this diagonal so that eventually we'll be settling to take on e5. But yeah, as you highlighted, the knight on h3 is trapped. It will never run away.
But it's credit to Alireza that he's really managed to kind of get Magnus in murky territory. The deep dark forest of complications where 2 + 2 is equal to 5. The path out is wide enough for just one, narrow enough for just one. It's McCarthal's forest of complications.
Yes, exactly. And it's also very much Alireza style. So heart rates 115 for Alireza against 104. Yeah, Magnus is feeling the pressure, but this is how it should be. Yeah, nothing is given for free. Even in winning positions, these guys are creating problems. They never go down without any fight.
Reza there looking at the clock. He knows it's so important for him to keep the pressure on the clock as well. The more he thinks, the more time Magnus gets to think about the position as well. So f4 on the board. What do you think would be Alireza's next move here? I like your idea of stepping in with rook d8 because as long as queen a4 jumps in with a check, your queen is still tied up. The only issue I see is that maybe the queen's tied up, but can white actually start attacking the knight with the rook? Is that a problem in black's position?
I think there are many problems, but we can also address it to Niklas quickly. What is your take, Niklas? What's happening?
Well, it seems the only choice to somewhat keep the game going is to go knight g6.
Wow.
Not an easy move to spot to begin with. If the knight takes, you could take the bishop on e3. If the queen takes, the queen moves away from defending the knight on b3, but even here after knight g6, honestly, you could still maybe go rook h1. Black has no threat, and as far as I can see it, it's also very much lost. So I think the position is just lost. f4 was a really nice touch, stabilizing the knight. This one is trapped. Black can never really take. It opens up the bishop, and Firouzja knows he is lost here.
And he's also under 2 minutes now. And after much discussion, you know, the realization that it's not just the queen, but also the rook that can go after this knight. And this could be the last few moves for Alireza in his mini match against Magnus.
He will try to come up with some more swindle, but yeah, basically knight g6 is one of these shockers. Yeah, if he can find knight g6, then that could maybe also have some effect on Magnus. Yeah, that if he hadn't foreseen knight g6, and knowing that from the white side, you think like, okay, I'm winning. The only thing I have to make sure to control the clock. Yeah, and now I'm gonna speed up, and I have my plans. Maybe knight g6 can unsettle things, but if he has this clear vision that rook h1 simply wins the game, then knight g6 will not disbalance him at all.
And Alireza is about to make the move. The clocks are leveling out now. But it is very difficult for black in this position to even find the next move, and knight g6 would be quite the genius move in this position. You see your knight, your queen attacking the opponent's knight and queen attack, and we do have a move.
No, look at this, not yet, but it's, yeah, and he moves the rook because under a minute, Alireza has spoiled all his time advantage, and knight c5 blitzed out instantly by Magnus, and now he wants to play queen b3, or he wants to even already, yeah, he wants to checkmate black.
And it doesn't feel like it's a faraway reality if black was to take on c5.
Queen b5,
but we've got moves coming in, but you never want to open up that light squared bishop. Queen b5.
Yeah, it's kind of a nice move, yeah, because
a5 is hanging.
a5 is hanging. You guard the b7 pawn. The computer is believing that it's kind of game over, but we are down to 45 seconds territory. Anything can happen unless there is a very clear way of winning things.
I agree. I think it's a game for all three results still. And Magnus still needs to be precise. And now he's touching the 30-second mark.
Yeah, and he is also confronted. Why is this game still on? Yeah, why I haven't won this game yet? Yeah, this is quite frustrating, and down to 20 seconds.
Alireza creating threats on the board. And you kind of have to watch out because at some point this might become a reality in the position.
Yes, and look at this, down to 10 seconds. Magnus is showing sign of nerves.
Yeah.
Right, he needs to make a move now.
5 seconds.
Magnus, has he forgotten about the clock? He makes it a bit of a panic there.
With 3 seconds on the clock, he played the move queen b3.
That's
but
not a good one. That's not a good one.
Not a good one at all.
Bishop takes c5. And Firouzja is back.
Wow.
Niklas, really quickly, show us what's the way forward for Niklas. Okay, we've got moves coming in.
He took on a5. Yeah, he took on a5 with check, very natural. By the way, also the heart rate over 138.
Watch out, mate in one threatened.
30 seconds for Alireza.
And you really don't want to go bishop takes knight here. I would even be worried about just take with the pawn. I don't believe you have the time. This comes in
He
with a
played
check.
queen b6.
Queen b6 on the board, trying to trade off. Queen b5, trying to trade off. It's done.
Queen b5, yeah, takes,
How about
takes.
this knight?
Now it's completely lost.
Knight on h3 is completely trapped. Can Magnus just... Yeah, he can do whatever he
He
wants.
played 96, yeah?
Yeah, knight e6. I was even wanted to say knight cd3, but yeah, knight e6, of course, is just winning.
It's winning everything. Whenever you take on e5, there is a discovered check, winning the bishop. Where do you move your rook? g7 is hanging, and always the idea of rook h1. And now Alireza with 5 seconds on the clock.
Yeah,
3,
in a hopeless
2.
situation. Rook g8 played.
Defending g7. Finally, rook h1 on the board.
F takes e5, so the knight on e5 is eliminated, but the knight on h3 has fallen. White has the winning structure. Black's knight on h8 is horrible. Black has these beautiful pawns, e5, f4, g3. That's a lovely pawn chain. Black's pawns on d5, b5, b7, all vulnerable, very weak. It's game over. And Black has to win this game, which is just impossible.
I mean, you can compare every element of this position and you see why Magnus is clearly winning. The knight against the knight, the rook against the rook, the pawns against each other, even the white bishop more active there. And Magnus, you can see it in him. He knows that he's got the job done, just needs to make the next couple of moves.
Yeah, rook c1 check, king d7, f5, and seems like it's
Just get
finished.
those pawn rollings.
Yep.
And the knight will fall back. You can go to d4, you can go to f4, start pushing. I like knight f4.
Yeah, it's basically a complete domination. Okay, rook c, whatever, yeah, everything is falling apart. Black has no activity.
And bishop b6 runs into a check, so there are no
Yeah,
tricks in the
resigns.
position. That's it. Magnus Carlsen bounces back. A difficult moment there for Alireza, and you could see it that for both players, this has been such a big battle, such a big match.